But just, it's interesting to know that the fact that there is patches of snow around, it's a unique similarity of sun. And I was gonna jump across the ravine, usually I can, but I don't think I can jump this far. Now, the snow melting and more grass being exposed. Here it's like it's wider water, and then if you go, don't be funny about this, I can't walk down there, be funny about that. So if I go more down the channel, it's a better chance just to see how the triangle is squeezing, that there'll be an easier route to jump. You want to find like the degrees, if it's brighter, if you want to see the air where it's cleaner, then that you would be dealing with triangles. And that's what the unit circle does. It's all based off triangles. Marks are mandated by the top of the triangle being a point. And of course, cosine and sine are triangles. And just have you note that I was right. The channel does close. And I was tipped off by that, by seeing the triangle come to a point. Now this triangle is special because it doesn't close, but it does become more narrow. So what triangles in nature are elongated and maybe even swivel into strings, that would be like a cage for a bad thing if it never saw the light ending and light was everywhere and it couldn't extinguish the light, because if you're bad, then you thrive off just the dark, and if that's all it was, it would be constant torment by light, which is in the Bible what happened to the devil. By being sent out of heaven, it can only survive where there's no life, and that's darkness, and that's why he doesn't like the light, he being the devil. Sorry, we went off on this biblical tangent, so reminiscent of light, because Lucifer is luminous. That's what it means, and it's just ironic because the luminous of a photon is what it can't stand. And the triangle in this situation would be in the material world, which the darkness of Lucifer thrives in the material world, because that's how it vanquishes the soul, by tricking it to being worldly. Much like the wind, how it's hard to tell what you're breathing in if it's trash from a distance. The direction of wind is one thing that you can tell is different than the following example. The following example is when it's snowed, but then there's still snowbanks around, and all these snowbanks around are accumulating a brightness. You wear your sunglasses when there's a whole bunch of snow outside because it's reflecting off the snow, making everything very bright. You'll see this similar effect in a parking lot with a whole bunch of cars. All the sun is reflected off the shiny window, shiny paint, and you'll see that the parking lot is very bright, and it will hurt your eyes, specifically if your eyes are bright. They're going to absorb in a lot of light. I don't know, but for me that's true. Usually you would think if they're darker they would be grabbing in more light. More on that dynamic later. But for me, it hurts my eyes pretty bad. When I was a kid, I was swimming in the pool, and I would find out quickly that I couldn't see in the pool because the sun was so bright. I'd be squinting my eyes the whole time. You'll see in my videos I'm squinting my eyes much of the time when my glasses aren't on, because the sun is just that bright. But now the snow is down, melting away. The banks, believe it or not, I'd say are still communicating the degrees of sun, making it bright in some spots. Some spots, the sun in the area are actually brighter, or is it all together making a collective bright bunch? In any case, I think that since there is snow around, it is much brighter than it wouldn't be if there were no snow. This is another game. If you can tightrope, that's dangerous. I would never do that because it can turn into violent without you trying to be violent, because when you lose, you die. Mainly if you slip on the rope, you're gonna fall and crush your skull. But a little bit more safer is you can just pretend that the shadow is a line, or if you're snowboarding and you're trying to not go off a cliff, you want to stick to the line. So this is to me, this is holographic virtuality at its very best. If you could project, much like a shadow, the range of a thermodynamic, you can depict anything in nature, including the scalability, the identification of the spectrum of a virus. This is not something in storybooks, like the kid game when you're trying to find an object. It's like hide and go seek, but not with a person. When you're trying to find an object, you reference them as being hot or cold. And if they're getting close to the object that they're trying to find, the other kid would say, "You're hot." And then it gets closer to the object, they're like, you're on fire, you're really hot. And then if the kid goes away from the object and they're getting further away from finding it, okay, you're warmer. Okay, now you've dropped down to cold, you're freezing. You're nowhere close to the object, you're cold, you're cold. And the kid would turn around and go back to where he thought it was warmer. This is embedded in the DNA. I don't know who came up with this game. Another game is freeze tag. Just another thing, when the snow freezes and then it thaws, you find stuff like this. I don't want to go any closer to it, but I can just imagine that there's signs of aggression, whether it be shedding or an attack. That was aerial footage of something that has left off of a body of an animal. Freeze tag is a game that you would play with people. Another game that kids play, it's with dealing with heat, nature, where if you get touched by the person who is it, you are frozen. And the person who is it, I guess, freezes everyone. I forget how once you're frozen, you're out. That's an interesting concept. When we're playing with vulnerabilities and likelihoods, the advantage is not in your regime. I documented before the sidewalk being covered in snow, or there not being a sidewalk at all, when the sidewalk stops and you have to go into the road. Now the snow is gone. Here's the next best. The next worst thing is these things here. And I'm not troubled by them. No, I actually like jumping over things. I like to run. I like to jump. And so I'm looking at this as fun, as like a parkour type of arena, of an adult playground when there really isn't one in public. You go to a beach and you have like some rings on a beach. Oh boy, now you're on a beach with rings. Well, if you live in the Midwest, you're never gonna see a beach, let alone one with rings. The disadvantage of likelihood. From my standpoint, that's not okay to have the blocking of the sidewalk. What's really not okay is to be in danger of like other things, like when you have airborne viruses, or just like trash in the air with wind tunnels. So I want to like test everything, be able to show with thermodynamics being regulated properly, because I'm now vulnerable from the isolated governing state failed to control a outbreak for over a year. So do you see how the isolation of a vector is that powerful? Isolated in the stadium gives an advantage for lenience on behavioral, to the degree of insanity or being celebrated for ostensibly the same activity. My defense is like, I want to do parkour on. If you get like a touchdown in football, you do a touchdown dance. If you do like great parkour, it'd be one way of celebrating, would just to go into a pile of mulch and pretend like you're swimming through it. The playing field in football is done in a stadium. They're in perfect contention with their surroundings to do a celebration dance without it being unworthy of a ticket, because the public is the arena for a person doing parkour. They are liable to a psych ward for the same exact celebratory act as a professional football player would engage in. I would be scrutinized by like the police getting a ticket writ. If they wanted to, they could say I have to go. Yeah. The other day, talking about over accentuations, one way you can capitalize if you have like an extra grip and a firm grip. And one way that you can achieve that is by a face mask or a rag. So when they say your last one because you're a rotten egg, then you can say get a grip, and you'll be referencing to the over accentuation of material that you put in use. I don't like my mask. I just passed a bunch of kids and they're having recess out of church because they are Christian schools in the United States. That's not far-fetched. So these Christian kids wearing masks. I remembered the game that I would play. The last one to do something is a rotten egg. When you're wearing your mask and they have to be worn over again, you're breathing in bacteria, and when they say you're a rotten egg and you're breathing in bacteria, it's actually real. Do you know that, well, this is like old Western when I hear this kind of style of thinking. It's literal, but it is Western because we're so gracious to think that we would deserve something different. The 4 trillion heist, the biggest heist in the world, was done by the government in the stimulus checks, where we would be getting $42,000 equally if they were giving the citizens the money. Instead, they give $2 billion to Bill Gates firms, and they pander out the rest from there with that logic of who gets what. But it's not about that. Once again, all glory is God. In a divine area, people would like more than that, so that's why we're here. I think we're all here because we wanted to be, and then sometimes you get confused and you want to leave, and some people do, but I can't speak for like anyone else but myself. I'm not gone yet. And what is the fight? The fight is God's, because between God and the devil sent bad owning to the angels around him to get rid of God. Instead, he put him to earth to show how bad he is, that he can have people that aren't God. People that aren't God. Thank you. He can have people that aren't God defeat the devil just to show how easily he is defeated. The devil represents everything that isn't living because he's a withered branch. So by God being with us in heaven, we're able to make heaven on earth and defeat the devil to show that that's real. Because we can have divine moments and entirely divine life. Jesus said people will hate you because like a lot of people hated him. Another way that this happens is with, if you're an atheist, that's okay too. I don't hate anyone. It's a great example nonetheless, that when a person and they're in doubt, they have the notion that it's God's fight, it's God's war, it's all glory is his as well. This is actually like quantum mechanics, where you get a result by a distance simply by fortifying a constraint in your foreground.